Good morning. Already the end of April. We had a pretty quiet week this week, actually. July corn down 5 cents. July soybeans the opposite direction, up 12. July Chicago wheat down 17, and July Minneapolis down 11. The wheat market's coming under some pressure because some rain in winter wheat country. Actually, we may have an above average winter wheat crop coming. July crude oil very quiet this week, down 32 cents. June gold down $30. Normally that's a big move in gold, but compared to the last few weeks, it's almost nothing. The Dow up 925 points, so quietly stronger this week would be the best description. The dollar up marginally 0.125. Of course, that dollar is down 12% since the middle of January. At the same time, actually, corn, soybeans, and wheat are down from that time. They should be up 12% actually if we were going to keep pace with the rest of the world's values. Planting progress this week, actually planting progress being measured. We're just a little bit ahead of normal as we kind of get started here the last part of April. Corn is 12% planted this week versus 11% last year at this time, or 10% average. So just slightly ahead of normal in planting progress. That's kind of the theme throughout here. Soybeans 8% planted this week versus 7 last year and 5% average. Slightly ahead of normal. Spring wheat, same thing. 17% this week, 14% last week, 12% average, just slightly ahead of normal. You can go right through. Barley, for sorghum and cotton are right on schedule, but basically we're just a little bit ahead of normal progress pretty much across all the grains. So there's some areas that have problems though, down in I guess Tennessee, Kentucky, very wet. They've got some problems down there. But as a whole, we're a little bit ahead of normal in planting progress. Here's the charts. Corn, a little bit of weakness this week, 4 or 5 days of trading, but actually pretty calm week relative to the rest of the last few weeks. But soybeans also finding a little bit of strength. There's certain trade negotiations going on, and apparently there are agreements with over 20 countries already. And so China, though, is not in agreement, but soybeans still are going higher, which makes you think maybe the United States wasn't being treated very well in agriculture for a long time on trade. If you look at the weather forecast coming up, this area, Tennessee, Kentucky, and southern Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, this is the wet area, 10 inches of rain in mid-April. And the forecast is for a little more rain there. That's going to hurt them. But look at this winter wheat country. Of course, winter wheat is centered pretty much in that western Kansas area and surrounding. But you're getting a lot of rain here in Oklahoma and eastern Kansas and into Texas. That is going to help winter wheat country. This area is probably going to get a lot of planting done. Some people told me in Iowa there are farmers who are done planting corn and soybeans in Iowa. But if you look at the average across the country, it's a little ahead of normal and not that much. Winter wheat ratings this week rated 45% good, excellent versus 47 last week and 50 last year. But our yield model is at 52.4 versus 51.65 trend. So we have, almost a bushel above normal trend yields coming in winter wheat. Last year's yield was 51.7, so we're a little bit above that. So, and of course, with that rain in winter wheat country this coming week, that'll probably improve again. Topsoil moisture is a little bit below last year, 66% this week versus 67 last week. So we are drying out, but a little bit below last year. Same on the subsoil. So we really don't have a problem on the soil moisture side, at least at this point. And the weather forecast is for a little drier and warmer than normal coming up, especially in the northern half of the Corn Belt. Southern half might be a little wet in that 8 to 14-day period, but certainly it doesn't look like we have any significant problems developing here. And you could see what's happening in winter wheat. We were lower this week, down about 16, 17 cents in the winter wheat. And so, there is some weakness from that improving winter wheat potential. And of course, that improving forecast coming up in the next 2 weeks. Spring wheat also mirroring that weakness. So in the outside markets, dynamic moves. Look at these moves we had just recently. Crude oil went from $71 at the beginning of April to it's at $54 at one point, $55 or so. But obviously kind of steadying up here. But still, those are new lows for the year. We actually came back to the old low of the year this week and found some weakness. But actually, crude oil energy prices should get a lot cheaper. I wouldn't be buying fuel needs unless you're buying on the futures side. I think that we're going to come back down here and test this $54 to $56 area in crude because it's dropped a lot, but the trend is definitely down. Gold, obviously, had a huge reversal on Monday, and I think we had $120, $130 range that day. And obviously, a downside reversal for the week. I think gold is going to come back down here and test that $3,200 area. And I think that's a good place to buy gold because I do think gold is going to run up to the $4,200 area before we're all said and done here. But obviously, some weakness we found this week. So the gold market was due for a potential setback after that rapid rally. Look at, that rapid rally here. We basically went up from 3,000 to almost $3,500. So a pretty big gain in a short period of time. So we're getting a little setback now. And the other outside markets, the Dow Jones, obviously very significant drops here since February, came down here. But, that volatility is over and it's become pretty obvious that the Trump tariffs, he isn't going to pick a trade war with the entire world like we thought a few weeks ago when this Dow was, down here in big trouble. So it's pretty much solving a lot of problems with a lot of countries. The China situation is going to continue, but will we actually get better trade terms or not? I guess it couldn't get much worse, I guess, from all the deals we've had in the past. And the last thing, the US dollar, we found a little strength here this week. But look at that weakness. We've dropped 12% since mid-January. 12%. Went from the high of the year to new lows in the dollar. We've rebounded basically to the old low. And I think, like crude oil, we'll probably find additional weakness. That's probably the most bullish thing about commodities. And I mentioned that while the dollar was here, corn, wheat, and soybean prices were actually a little higher. We've dropped 12% on the dollar, and actually wheat, corn, and soybeans are lower than they were back in January. That is significant. I think that's the most bullish thing you could say about commodities right now. We just need to generate the interest on the trade side and get this done and get all these trade worries behind us. And maybe we are in the process of doing that right now. At least the markets are suggesting that. A pretty quiet week overall. Some strength in soybeans, which of all things, if we have a trade war with China yet, the only significant trade war developing, why are soybeans strong? Maybe it has a lot to do with that dollar. Hope you have a great weekend and good marketing.